Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Hi, everyone. We have the most exciting guest for you today. His name is James Rosebush. He's a widely recognized leader in building and growing corporate, family office, and philanthropic organizations, as well as serving as advisor to families on the complex issues of wealth management. He recently published his third book and bestseller, Winning Your Audience: Speak with the Authority of a President. This follows his bestseller, True Reagan: What Made Ronald Reagan Great and Why It Matters, a rare insight into the 40th president's mysterious character as Rosebush discerned it from his years of working for him. At the request of President Bush, he created and was the first CEO of the Challenger Memorial Foundation, with 46 space science education centers around the world. He served as the president and board member of the Fairfax County Education Foundation. And in the White House, Mr. Rosebush was President Reagan's point man on philanthropy and public-private partnerships. As a commissioned officer at the White House, he inaugurated and managed the president's favorite domestic program, Private Sector Initiatives, designed to engender private sector solutions for public problems, a precursor of today's social impact investing. Well, good. How are you today, James? I got to tell you, after all that, I'm not even going to ask you what you think of today's political climate. We will get into your particular story for today, which of course is all about the people that you coach and the speaking and all of that. And for the last 40 years, I have been working as a professional speaker. I have my CSP from the National Speakers Association, and we're all on hold right now with everything that's going on. But you do say that the people you coach have told you that you changed their lives. So tell us what they mean by that and how it's impacted them.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And that's a great question to start with. And isn't it fascinating that people say, you changed my life? It wasn't that I personally changed their life, but they gained new knowledge about themselves that allowed them to feel a greater sense of mission and a stability and confidence in public speaking. And that could be really given to them through a new self-awareness in a lot of different ways. And I'll give you an example. I'll tell you a story that one time I was coaching a gentleman who was in the investment business, and it was his job to sell investors on his strategy. So he approached the podium with his head down. He was speaking basically to the floor rather than speaking out to the audience. And his hair, he was a handsome gentleman, his hair was flopping down on his forehead. So I took a look at him and I said, I want you to go across the street to the CVS and get some hair gel. He said, I thought this was a session where you were teaching me how to speak. He said, oh, and I said, oh, it is. You just do what I tell you. So he went across the street, came back. I said, put some gel in your hair. Put your hair back. So he stood up, he did that. And then I said, I want you to put your neck against your collar. And I want you to show me how you're touching the back of your neck to the collar of your shirt. All of a sudden, his face could be seen by the audience. The light that was being generated from the auditorium onto the stage found him before he was in hiding. And he was, obviously, with his hair coming down over his face. It turned out that he looked like the actor Richard Gere, but no one ever knew it because he was hiding.
And
so what happened is the audience started applauding him. They started listening to what he had to say. And at the end of this experiment, where I put him in front of the audience, he said to me, you just changed my life. And it wasn't that I did it, but it was these tactics that I have to tell you, Gayle, people go on day after day after day in ignorance and fear. 75% of all people suffer glossophobia, which is a fear of public speaking, because they don't have access to this. I was coaching a president of a major global corporation, and he had no means to really move and motivate an audience, and he was asked to give a graduation address at his alma mater, which was an important school. And he was an important person, and they wanted to hear from him. So I took a look at his speech and I said, do you mind if I play around a little bit with it? No, go ahead. And then I said, do you mind if I rewrite this speech for you? Because it doesn't reflect on what's in your heart. So I talked to him more about it. We got this speech going in a way that reflected his passion and what he felt was really important. And for the first time in his life ever, and this is a significant man of power and influence across the globe, he got a standing ovation for his speech. And he said the same thing: you changed my life. Again, it wasn't that I personally changed his life, but he learned that speaking with authority, in order to connect with your audience, which is the most important thing, you have to build a bridge to your audience and tell them stories that they can link into.
I so totally agree with you, because I have to tell you, I have always said, of course, I've been on stage since I was 3, and I always say you could put me in the middle of a freeway and tell me to talk about potato chips, and I would be there for an hour doing that. But, it is amazing to me and to someone like you who do this for a living that there are people who are afraid of it and who don't have the potential and to see it themselves. That's what's amazing to me. So by gaining self-confidence and mastering their ego, you feel that is what helps to become a better speaker. Is that correct?
I have a 12-point system, but I would say that the most important thing is to build a connection with your audience. And one time I was on the South Lawn of the White House and we were putting on a performance, and Mary Martin, the great actress from stage and Peter Pan and movies and everything like that, I said to her, I said, why do your audiences love you? And she threw her arms around me, Gayle. She threw her arms around me. This is great. And she said, Jim, I was born in Texas, and I was born loving people, and they love me back. And
wow, that's a great
that to me says it all. A lot of speakers, they go into their audience, and this isn't just, this is not just people who give lecture to 1 million people. This is some people who pick up a phone to make a sales call, or people that are doing a Zoom meeting. You have to love your audience. You have to love being there, and you must build a bridge to your audience. Margaret Thatcher told me another way. I said, I was talking to her one time at number 10 Downing Street, and I said, tell me about you're the Iron Lady, for heaven's sakes, right? Powerful woman. And she said, oh, Jim, every time I get on a podium, I'm afraid. I said, no, come on, it's impossible. She said, I have to say to myself, come on, old gal, you can do this, you can do this. Then the message takes over. The message takes over. The first thing, it's a 2-step process. You have to speak to the fear. And when you speak to the fear, it will diminish to the point that your thought then grabs a hold of your message. And the most important thing to do then is to begin your speech, your talk, with a story. And this story has to relate either to your life or to someone else's life that you've met. Like I just did. If anyone who is listening to this, follow this example that I just gave you. I just told you 2 stories about my discussions with Margaret Thatcher and with Mary Martin. Now, what are you going to remember of what I just said to you? You're going to remember the stories of what I just said. So 65% of all communication is nonverbal. So you're going to remember the stories because they're metaphors, they're pictures, they're verbal pictures that transform from my consciousness to yours. I call myself the only non-Catholic that's been blessed by the Pope 3 times. 3 times I was blessed by JP2, that some people call him John Paul II, right? This was a gentleman who was so imbued with his relationship with God that when he held your hand and blessed you, you felt blessed. You follow me? It was his, it wasn't, his words were very few, but he held both of my hands in his hands. He looked into my eyes and he conveyed the fact that God loved me. And that was his blessing. And again, it wasn't a recitation of a long litany of words, was it? It was a transfer of the love in his heart to the love in my heart. And this is something that people don't get by and large, that this 65% of all communication is nonverbal. It's how you carry yourself when you go up on stage. It's the way you think about yourself that is conveyed to the people in the audience. And you must build a bridge of connection to your audience. So go back to Mary Martin for a minute. She goes on stage, right? She has to do what we call tear down the fourth wall. You know what the fourth wall is? So when you're on stage, you have a wall behind you, you have a wall stage right, you have a wall stage left, and you have a wall in front of you between you and the audience. So Mary Martin goes on stage. Anyone who, I'm sure many of your listeners have gone to the theater, they've gone to plays, whatever. And, you go in, you settle into your seat. What do you think? Yeah, you think, well, is this going to be any good? Is this worth my time? Blah, 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 right? The actor or the performer has to win you in the first 14 seconds of your listening to that performance. That's when the bridge has to be built. And anyone who is, I'm sure like you, a well-respected and regarded speaker, you've been doing it since you were a little girl, the audience is going to make a decision about whether they're going to listen to you or not in the first 14 seconds of your appearance.
You are right on target, Jim, when you talk about how you approach even getting to what you might call a podium. I don't like to speak behind a podium. I'm always kind of wandering the stage, but I do think they judge you from the time you get out from your seat or come from behind the curtain when you walk on. And then when you first open your mouth, they have a very deep impression of who you are. And you also talk about people who do not have this confidence of getting in front of people and speaking well. They do it because they have to do it or they're in a position to do it. So what do you think are the great inhibitors to public speaking?
Well, the first inhibitor is not having a message. So you have to determine that you're going to speak to an audience about something they want to hear. Now, when I'm talking like we are today, we're having a conversation about effective public speaking. That affects everyone at any level, whether you're a school teacher, whether you're a student, whether you're a salesperson behind a counter, wherever it is, making a connection with your audience. So you have to have a message that's of value to your audience. If I were to come on your show and talk about something that had absolutely no value to the audience, then they're not going to be interested. And that's all a part of caring more about your audience than you care about yourself. Now, Reagan, who I learned a million tricks about communication from, and I had the great honor of working for, he had no ego in play. This is highly unusual. Most of us, at least at a minimum, have a little bit of ego. We like it when we get an applause, and we don't like it when we see people in the audience on their phones, right? Although I tell my students, one exception to this, people today may be on their phones actually taking notes of what you're saying, which I think can be good, but we certainly don't want to see people falling asleep in our audience. We care about getting that kind of feedback and confidence. Reagan didn't care at all. And as a result, he was called the great communicator. Why? Because he didn't care what the audience thought about him. So he had the boldness and he had the confidence in his own strongly held beliefs and political platforms to go out and say that the former Soviet Union was the evil empire. Why? And previous president, now this is interesting. Previous presidents had called it the evil empire, and the media didn't jump all over them. They jumped all over Reagan. Why did they do this? They did it because Reagan believed the Soviet Union was the evil empire. He believed in what he was saying. And again, that came directly from his heart and from his consciousness right out onto the audience. And they felt that he had such a strongly held belief about it that he was going to do something about it. So his audience, which was global, when you're president of the United States, the most powerful position in the world, when the things he said were taken very seriously. That's why he was called the Teflon president as well. He had no ego in the fight. And the audience can tell. One time my wife and I went to a funeral service where people were giving eulogies, right? So the first gentleman who stood up said, I knew this gentleman so well because he followed my trail at an Ivy League college, and he followed me into my business, which was so successful. And basically, he was telling the congregation that this gentleman who had just passed away and he was there to honor was good and great because he was great. And everyone was looking, very unsettled in our seats and like, oh my gosh, how could this be happening? Fortunately, the next person came along and he said nothing about himself. He had no ego in play. He was there to honor his friend who had passed away. Well, you see the difference, right? You're not up there to talk about yourself. Now, Reagan never used the personal pronoun I. Never, 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 never. He always referred to, in 96% of his speeches, he quoted liberally from the patriots, former presidents, the prophets. And he felt that if he could just get to his audience unfiltered and unfettered by the media and convince them that what he was saying was endorsed by people who were smarter, greater, and had more of a historical legacy than he did, that his words would be like heat-seeking missiles and reach their target.
And he was right on. And it's very interesting because what you're talking about is so important, especially when you see some of the leaders that we have today who are always self-aggrandizing, that they're the top and they're the best and nobody else has an opinion. And I think opinions are very important as long as they're factual, and I think you can see both sides of the coin if things are factual. And of course, in the speaking business, we have a saying that facts tell and stories sell. So that kind of speaks to what you're talking about in the belief system. But you also said that you learned speaking from your dad. So what was that like and how did that happen? I mean, I always think people kind of gravitate to their parents' professions because of osmosis, just being around it. But I don't know what your dad did, and I'm not sure the impact he had in terms of speaking. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you. So I always say to my students, leave your mother at home. And they're like, what? What do you mean? I don't travel with my mother. What are you talking about? So if you look at a speaker who is searching for his words or her words, or they don't feel comfortable or confident, it's generally, I know exactly where to go in coaching them. And that is, did you have a domineering or dominant parent who brought you up and was perhaps highly critical of you? Well, yes, my mother, my dad, blah, 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 blah. And what happens, Carol, this is like a script that runs in your subconsciousness. You're not aware of it, but this little used to be, well, is be a dated metaphor now, but like a stock ticker that would be running around in your mind, your subconscious telling you you're talking too long. You're not loud enough. People can't hear you. I don't like what you're wearing. I don't like your hair. Get your hair out of your face. All these things, parents do this wisely to help bring up their kids in a responsible way. But these are things that you carry with you, and you absolutely must address these. And we do in my coaching sessions, because there's a way to defeat this. I had to do this in my early days because my dad, to answer your question, was a teacher of Dale Carnegie, the famous speaking method. And he was three things in his life. He was a corporate executive, he taught Dale Carnegie, and he was a musician. And he gave me all three. He gave me skill in business and how to grow companies, which I do, and he gave me skill in public speaking, and he gave me the love of music and being a musician, which I am as well. So this was in early days when I'm probably like in elementary school, or you know how you kids you have to stand and deliver. I always had to practice with him, and he was a stern taskmaster when it had to do with my speaking in front of even my elementary school classmates. So he gave me all of these pointers, but I had to get to myself to a point where I could spring independent of his judgment, which I did when I was 20 years old. I went to the Soviet Union and I was trailed by spies, and I had a dossier created about me. I wasn't a spy myself, but I went there for professional reasons. I was a Rotary International Scholar. When I came back, and this is just to conclude what I wanted to share with you. When I came back from that trip of, I don't know, 6 weeks duration, I had met with some very impressive and interesting people in the Soviet Union. And part of my responsibility was to give speeches to the Rotary Club. And I thought, well, I can do this now, even though my dad will be in the audience of some of these, because I have stories to tell. I have a message to deliver. And that liberated me from the fear of being judged by my dad.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, we only have a little less than 5 minutes left, Jim. So tell us about your book, your new book, why you think it's skyrocketed to #1 on Amazon, and that was in just a week. And then what are people going to get from this book? And I know you also coach people in public speaking and communicating. So how can people reach you? Just tell us a little bit about how we can get in touch with you, what our audience can learn from getting your book, etc. And where I guess they can find it on Amazon and other places that books are sold.
That's right. That's right. So here's the deal. I wrote this book for you. And that means every single person that's listening, you've got to get a copy of this book because it's a handbook. It's not a precious book of, sure, it has all kinds of stories and examples of people that I've met, I've worked with, and people that I haven't met. This has got examples from Churchill. It has from Dr. Martin Luther King. It's got examples of sports figures and the way that they talk. But it's got lists of how to. You can tear this out. You can mark it up. You can put it in your wallet. You can put it in your jacket. You can take it with you. You can learn these things. This book will transform your life, and that's why it's flying off the shelves. I think that this book is critical to anyone's success. And you can reach me to find out about my coaching, which I can do remotely or I do in person, on this website, www.impactspeakercoach.com. Impactspeakercoach.com. That's where you can find out all about how I do it, the fees associated with it, and so forth. I love to do this. I put on master classes for groups. I'm doing one tonight, as a matter of fact, for a group of kind of early young professionals and millennials that want to learn more about how to do this. I've done it for women's groups. Last week we did it for a women's group at DoorDash, a company in San Francisco. They loved it. Why? Because I think there's certain things about women speakers, and you know this, have to have more gravity in their voice. They have than a gentleman usually, simply because the tone of the voice is, the deeper the voice, the more easily it's heard by the human ear. They're different things. This book is full of how-to tips that you can gain tremendous value from. So please get a copy of this book as soon as you can, winning your audience, and be in contact with me. I want to talk to you right at impactspeakercoach.com.
Well, folks, you've got it from the true person who knows what he's talking about. He's worked with leaders of the world. He's written many, many best-selling books. And He's a coach. He's going to tell you the truth. He's going, whether you like it or not, he's going to tell you the truth and get you to where you need to be. And that's the whole important part of having a coach, not someone that says, oh, this was wonderful and everything. You need someone who's going to tell you the truth. And James Rosebush is someone who will do that. So, wow, this has really been fascinating, James. And I can tell you that our audience, I mean, this is a living regret-free program. And public speaking, as you said, it's 75% of the people have a fear of public speaking. So you're doing a great service, and we certainly appreciate you being with us today. And again, remember, if you go to www.impactspeakercoach.com, that's his website, and you'll find him there. He's on Facebook, he's on LinkedIn. James Rosebush, thank you so much for being with us today, and very educational and very entertaining.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Hi, this is Dr. Gayle, and I wanted you to know I have a whole bunch of other things to offer you. If you go to spunkyoldbroad.com, you will see an array of SOB stuff for sale and all our latest products and additions. If you're interested in getting on TV, I have a brand new course, Get on TV. And if you want to start your own business, you'll want my SOB Guide to Business Success. I know you'll love them all. I guarantee it.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.